Hey everyone, you're listening to the TEN7 Podcast, where we get together every fortnight, and sometimes more often, to talk about technology, business, and the humans in it. I'm your host, Ivan Stegic. My guest today is Aaron James Draplin. Aaron is a graphic designer that's based in Portland, Oregon, but to me it feels like he's all over the planet all of the time. He's the founder of Draplin Design Company and has worked with the likes of Nike, Burton, and the Obama administration. He's somehow involved with Field Notes brand. I'm going to ask about that. He's also the author of Pretty Much Everything, a book about the work he's done so far in life. And there's a lot of that. I'm so glad that he's agreed to join me today. Hey, Aaron, welcome to the podcast.
Well, hello there.
So you're sitting in beautiful Portland right now, aren't you?
Yeah. I hear the aren't ya? There's some Minneapolis. Been missing that one for a while. Yeah, I'm in Portland. I got up this morning and dropped my Volvo off. I bought a Volvo brand new in 2010. And I have babied that thing, tried to all these years, and today I dropped it off for some kind of a service doodad, and that was my morning. And then I raced back here, did a little bit of work, couple invoices, couple emails, and I'm getting ready to go to Richmond, Virginia in a couple days here, and then down to Raleigh, North Carolina, a couple days after that.
You're all over the place. I love it. Now, did you go to Sweden to pick up your Volvo? Did you do that whole pickup thing?
No, that's a bit of a I was kind of told, like, so turns out, it sounds really cool until you go do it. And it was like, well, what do you mean? What do you mean? And there was some little hitch. There was some little hitch to that thing that kind of freaked me out. And it was like, you stay there a long time, it's expensive, and then you're waiting, and there was something to it that was like, oh, I guess I won't be going to do that thing. I got all excited. I looked into it, and then someone told me something like, yeah, it's better if you're like 65 years old where you have a lot of time to wait or something like that. And I remember just kind of like, oh, because I was going to go do it, Yeah. It was like this attractive thing. There was something like they don't put you up in the nicest of things or something like that, where there was like, a little bit of a wah, kind of a thing. Yeah. I can't remember what it was specifically, but yeah. But it sounds cool, sounded cool, and I did pick my Volvo simply based on typography.
Oh, did you really? Of course
absolutely.
You did.
Of course I did. Yeah, it was when I got inside that thing, I knew what I wanted, and
station wagon.
I knew that they were, and I knew that they were safe, and there were other things that were just beautifully engineered and just all the stuff that they're known for. But I will say that the typography inside the cockpit really made a big difference for me, because it was just like something you're going to be looking at for a long time. And, you're spending all this money and all that kind of stuff, but it was just something that just made sense. And I remember, trying to explain that to the guy, and, that's another one of those moments where it's like, oh, you're just talking too much, and it's like, oh, this means something to me. Like, they thought about that in Sweden, and I appreciate it. And I'm going to be looking at this damn thing for years. Let's get this thing right. So I remember that. But today is one of those days where you're like, why did I ever do this to myself? Because you're dropping the thing off, and you just know you're a mark. They got you. Let's talk about design. Sorry.
No, this is one of the things that I absolutely admire about you, Aaron. It reminds me of that original video that I was introduced to you and your shenanigans, and that was that why is America effed? Right? Why? Yep. And you had a very similar treatise on the design of the logo of that motel that you saw, and I think you were eBaying. Okay, can you tell the story about how that happened and like what made you so mad about that?
Well, all these years later, I will say, as a 45-year-old person, I would have been, I don't know, 35 or 32 or something, and I do feel a little bad because the power of the internet is a terrifying thing. Like the idea that I remember I got a bit of a snarky email from a guy. Well, what it was, that made me rethink my position on that. What it was simply this. I was back home in Michigan where I'm from. I was with my mom and dad, and I love eBay. I've always loved eBay, and I'm on eBay. I'm playing around, and there's this sign for sale. Now, I'd always wanted one of these the certain geometry of this arrow, and there was a sign, and it was awesome, and beyond that, it was like reasonably affordable. So, anytime I'd ever seen one of these little signs with this arrow, they were so much money. There was just no way, in my 35-year-oldness, I was going to be able to afford that stuff. They were $7,000 and stuff. And here's this one where it's somewhere in the ballpark of like, I don't know. I want to say I don't know. I spent $300 or $500 or something. I mean, it's over 10 years ago. So I got excited that there's this big sign and there's attached all these different arrows. I'm getting the one arrow I want for this price. I'm getting another arrow for this price. And then here's this big, awesome sign, And the thing is like, I did it. I'm not much of a drinker. And I was back home and my buddies had, we had gone out or something. And I was just a smidge tipsy. I remember my buddy having to drive me all the way back out to where my mom and dad live, which was basically just far from where, from in town. Okay. So I bought this thing, and I might have been a little under the influence, and I wasn't quite thinking, or maybe I was thinking, I don't know. It was weird. And I woke up the next day and went and was excited, and then it was like this moment where it was like, oh my God, what did I do? There's one of these moments somewhere there, where it was like, what did I just buy? What did I just get myself into? Because I got an email saying, hey, I mean, you do understand that this thing is it's this size. And I went and looked at it, and it's like, I remember talking to my dad and saying, it's like 30 feet tall. And my dad was like, you asshole, do you even know what it takes to get us? Do you even know how sharp that thing is? And he was kind of, it's like mad at me. And I'm like, don't you worry about a thing. I'm my own person. I'm driving back out west, starting to, tomorrow, and I'll stop and get the thing. So, here it was like this funny thing where it's like, say the sign. I remember the sign was by St. Louis. And I was like, well, I can go down to Chicago and then work my way out west, or I can go all the way down to St. Louis, and it's just on the way. We'll just say it's just on the way. It's on the way. So I'm gonna go grab this thing. And I get this email that says like, this thing's pretty big, and how do you want to do this? So it's like from a sign company. So, here's the thing is I get down there and I'm all excited. Like, here's this, like, I'm going to have this thing for the rest of my life. Just the funny little parts of it. Like, oh, right. I get to have, I get this cool arrow. I don't even know what they're going to do with this big giant sign part. It's like, it's big. And then you're freaked out by that. And then you get up close to it and you're realizing like, oh my gosh, like this thing, I am way out of my league here. Okay. So when I get down there, I go to this sign company and I kind of check in and say, yeah, I bought the sign and I'm here to pick it up, and what's that all entail? And the guy, I remember it's just in pieces in the back, like I didn't get to see it. Like I saw certain pieces I already taken down, and then I drive, and then he's like, oh, by the way, the thing is still up over here, this Sunset Motor or whatever, Motor Lodge, it's still up. Go take a look. So I drive over this thing, and it's on this big highway kind of thing, 4-lane, 5-lane highway with a middle turning lane, and I pull into this little, Motor Lodge, and there it is, and the thing's big, and it's like this thing is coming down tonight or something, and I'm going to spend the night there. It's coming down today. I get to pick it up tomorrow, and I just realized in my Passat wagon, there's no way I'm going to get this thing out west. So it's like, shit, whatever, and I'm kind of like, they're going to be mad at me, but here's the deal, I paid $300 for this thing. It went to someone, and now I have to go and fess up and say there's just no way I can do it. And I think they just knew that the moment they saw me. Mm-hmm. But here's the thing: I go in to into this little Motor Lodge, and there's a woman there from somewhere far away. She has a thick accent, and I explained to her. It takes her a couple seconds to kind of process. Well, who is this? And I explained to her. I go, well, I'm the guy that bought the sign. And, I'm going to try to explain to her, like, I just think these things are really cool, and, like, this is such a piece of America, and I'm going to try to do all this stuff. And somewhere she thinks I must be like working for them or something. And she pulled out this little folder, and the folder had a big stack of paperwork. And basically it was all the paperwork that was going to go into the building and the installation and the design of this new the new sign they're going to put up. And it was kind of like, well, they're putting up a new sign. And she was like, well, do you want to see that, or something to this effect? So I see in front of me all these invoices and stuff, and the invoices I'm seeing are like $15,000. Like it's a lot of money. It's a sign. It's this big tall thing. You have to turn it on. There's wiring. There's stuff. But I get to the page where it's the mock-up, and just frankly, it's just this really phoned in, really shitty. I mean, first of all, who am I even to judge, right? Who am I to say that I know what is good and what isn't bad? But it was just in this really fleeting moment where it was heartbreaking to me to be like, oh my gosh, this family, I mean, who knows where they're from? Maybe from like Russia or so, I don't know where they were from. But it was like, this is what they're handed? Like, what a bummer. Like sure, I mean, like, it was already like signed and like they were making it for these guys. You know, I saw it like in this sign shop when I was picking up the pieces later that day. And it just was this really weird moment that broke my kind of heart, because it was like, we have this responsibility. Whether or not we're working for cool things, or we're working for big things, or we're working for uncool things, it is absolutely our job to do a good job. Because frankly, what just punched me in the face was, that sign, you're going to see it up forever. Mm-hmm. So whatever goofy little thing I'm working on right now, like right now I'm working on some graphics for this thing called Rooster Teeth. And what it is, it's this cool like video game, and they make podcasts and kind of a media. I don't know. Well, I'm making these graphics, but frankly, the graphics I'm making for this thing, like it's only going to last so long, and then it kind of goes away, and then maybe they'll ask me back again, but it's this sort of like up and down quality, and then it's done, right? And here's the thing, it's like I'm there, and it really made me angry, because they kind of couldn't defend themselves, and then who's their advocate to kind of go back to the sign place and be like, man, do a little bit better job for them. They didn't have that. They just were handed what they were handed, and it was done. And it just made me mad. And I drove out of there like, a little miffed, like they deserve more. You paid the price. Like, have a little bit of pride in your craft. Like, the things I'm making today, I'm nerding out over. What a privilege to do any of this stuff. But frankly, if you're making a banner for someone and that's considered like, I mean, I don't know if I might have talked to the kid when I went in and did the paper. I remember someone running my card, which was like the fee to take the thing down. It was like my MasterCard, and I had to there's a fee to like take down the sign or something. And I had to have my card, swiped. And when I talked to that kid, I was kind of asking like, well, who designed this thing? And this is after I had to go back. I didn't say anything. I didn't get anyone's face, nothing like that. Well, what I did was my buddy was going to try to do a documentary about me. And that's one of the first times I've ever had anyone really interested in like what I do, and like, hey, we're going to do this thing, and we're going to, it's going to be like, the premise of his documentary on me was that, no one else in town had the time all of a sudden, so you might as well just, waste the, sort of try it on me because no one else has the time. And I'm like, well, sure, come over, let's run a little bit of, put the camera on me, let's see how it feels. Well, one of the rants I went on was about this story and about this sign. And, nothing kind of came of it, like my buddy, this thing wasn't really happening, and blah, blah, blah. And then he put it up somewhere, and we just kind of put it up for fun, for our friends to see, because he wasn't going to quite make the documentary. We put this thing up, and then it goes nuts. Mm-hmm. And then it goes nuts. And it starts getting like some traction. And then you're starting to have people contact me and start saying things like, well, do you want to go on the record, because you kind of fought this thing back. Do you want to go on the record talking about this? And it was like, whoa, like, that's everywhere in America. That's not just, Sedalia, Missouri. That is everywhere, this stuff. I mean, as a person who loves old signs and things and stuff, it's not any big revelation that there's just kind of crappy work out there polluting the sort of countryside everywhere you go.
That was 2007 or 8 or 10,
Yeah,
or it was about at least 10 years ago. Do you think we're still in the same position, or have things changed?
Oh, I don't know if I mean, what good would I have done? I mean, I've reached a lot of people with my little rant. Do I think things have changed? I don't know, but I'll just say this much. It's like, I have a profound respect for those who really look at the communities they're around and say, yeah, this is the right way to do this, and here's the right reason, and it should look like this, and let's be respectful of these people, of them working and selling this product and things. I don't know. I just have a respect for people who are thinking about that, because in that moment, what I realized was like, these people that were making this sign, they just weren't thinking about it. The things this was like a little motor lodge. You pull in, there's probably 12 units, right? And when you run into this thing, it's like, what is their charm? Like 100 yards down the road, there's a Hampton Inn the size of a football stadium. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And then here's their little thing. It's like, what is the charm? All the charm has just been, all the juice has just been squeezed out of this thing. It just looks like it's just this chumpy sign, and it could have just stayed a relic. It could have, because maybe that's the best angle. Yeah. And it pissed me off. It pissed me off because, one of my jobs as someone who comes in to do a logo for someone is to kind of say, like, well, wait a second, before we go and trash this thing, maybe there's something, there's some good moves to be had. Yeah, there's some good, there's just some, like, let's just pump the brakes just a little tiny bit before, and see, like, why are we going to be simple? Because all it needs to be is simple. Yeah. Why are we going to be complex? Because everything else we've done is simple. And it's, and you're just kind of like, in this moment where it was like, man, I would have really like went and took a look at least a block around me, 1 block around me, to say, well, look at how are these guys going to compete, and what is the best way for them to compete, and what do they have going for them, what don't they have going for them, and then why is it going to now look just kind of like this, like, kind of forgettable thing? And I don't know, it was about responsibility mainly. Like,
design is important. Design is important, and we all have a responsibility to make sure that it gets executed. Take pride is what you're saying, from what I hear.
Just do the job and think about who's gonna, who's gonna be like playing with it, who's gonna be looking at it, and be a good little citizen, I guess.
Yeah. Let's go back to the early 70s. So you were born and raised in Michigan, right? Have you always had an interest in typography? Like, what are like your earliest memories of, cool looking things, of design? Were they in Michigan?
Yeah, well, I think I remember, Yvonne, how old are you?
I'm 2 years younger or 3 years younger than you are. So I'm like 76, and I think you're 74 or 73 or something like that.
Yeah, so I'm 45. So, I mean, it's just weird as we get old. But, I think back to, like, I want to tell you things that you would remember, but you would absolutely remember.
I totally
Lego
would.
Boxes.
Oh, yeah.
So that was something premium that I remember, we didn't have a lot of, but that was something really, really premium that got me excited, because it was just this sort of thing where it was like, we didn't have a lot of these things. I remember my dad like saying that these are really, they're from like, it's like Denmark or somewhere far away, and it was like, it was just this thing where it was like, I knew that they were special. And I knew that you had to kind of savor them, and I knew that, you couldn't just trash the boxes and stuff, because this stuff was like, my parents just couldn't load us all up on a ton of it. You just got this sense when you held the package that it was like this kind of special thing. And that's one of the first times when I just understood, like, this was like, it did not feel like my other toys, which would have been what? Star Wars and, things and, whatever those things were. It just felt a little bit, it reminded me, just the packaging even, it reminded me of when my mom and dad would go get these kind of modern dance, it was called. And they were like Danish cups.
Yeah.
And
Oh, yeah.
And it was all out of the, Heller, Vignelli, these names, these things. I'm probably
yeah.
murdering it. But we had a couple of those laying around. And those were splurges from my mom and dad, They were splurges from my mom and dad to, like, have this nice kind of well-designed, modern, not necessarily furniture, but just cups and things and plates and stuff. And it had this really interesting utilitarian quality. It was just a cup. This is how your hand held it. It was plastic. It was bright. And I loved that stuff. And that felt like a Lego to me, So I just remember those things as splurges. I remember what my grandmother's china or my plates and things looked like. I remember what all that stuff looked like. And it felt like that of a Polish, like an older lady, an older Polish lady. It felt like that. It smelled like that. And here was, my mom and dad had a lot of oak and a lot of stuff, but it's like they also had these little moments of this sort of like modernism, right? And when you go all the way back, it's like that's just kind of where it started. Like really the first time I remember being appreciative or sort of like cognizant of Helvetica was on the side of the space shuttle.
Yes.
Because it felt like my Lego boxes.
Yes.
And it felt like this system. It felt like this system instead of this one-off thing. It felt like there could have been 100 of them or something. And that's, you're a little kid, so I always nerded out on that stuff. But I remember when I started to get to like whatever age it was, where I started to make my own little typefaces. I would draw these things and play with these things.
Letraset? Did you ever use Letraset?
Well, I saw it from a distance with a couple of my cousins. I saw it from a distance from a buddy of mine whose dad was an architect, and I got to see it there. We weren't really allowed to touch anything. I do remember that, like, don't touch this stuff. But I understood what it was for. I understood that it was like, this thing that, like, you would, trees and things. This guy was an architect, so he's building all these pieces, and I remember seeing that stuff. So just, there's a, kind of a quality of like, at a young age, from my uncle who was a bit of an engineer, and my cousin Tommy Draplin, who was, he was an artist who was going to art school in New York City, and I just remember this sort of like his art supplies just felt like the real deal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, they just felt like the real deal. Like, my stuff was from a rural community up in northern Michigan, and his stuff felt like you could tell it was from a city, And my stuff felt like this is what you could get at, there's a place in my town called Myers, and Myers would be kind of like a Target, Myers Thrifty Acres. I knew where my stuff was from. That was what we had. And then, when I was around him, I remember wanting to play with his sketchbooks and stuff, and I was like a little kid. You can't touch that stuff, And here is, it was just like all those tools, all those pieces, all that stuff. That's when it really started for me. It started, it was like, wow, I'm around, like the drawing board that my buddy Tom, his dad's name was John Prote. Tom Prote was my buddy. I went to high school with him and, middle school with this guy. And his dad was like this architect, and he could draw, and just his handwriting was so incredible, right? This kind of thing. And it's like, I just remember that stuff. And I remember it being like this kind of like, it felt like this exotic thing. I was just telling a story to a guy the other day we were kind of talking about like how New York has changed. And this guy had lived there for a lot of years, right? A lot of years. Like he kind of left. He kind of came back to whatever it was going to be. He kind of, he came to Portland. And I told him, I said, the first time I went there, my cousin Tom, he took me to Pearl Paint. And he's like, oh, Pearl Paint. And Pearl Paint was just this incredible art store, 3 stories of it right on Canal. And here I am, this young kid, and you go to Canal, where it's like a place of the world. Like, you can get anything. You get shitty jewelry. You can get fake purses. It's just this commerce quality. Like, you're around people that might rip you off. It's exciting. You're seeing scarves and dumb things and tourist trinkets and junk and things. And I remember it just being exciting. And then here's this a couple blocks away, Pearl Paint. And I went there as a kid who didn't have a lot of money. And that day I dropped like $600. I bought like markers and things and stuff because I just really felt like, well, this is the only place in the world you're going to get this stuff. This is the only place, right? And like what we were talking about, I was like, what a bummer. What a bummer that changed. That like, yeah, you go on Amazon, and that's the only place you can get it. And I remember, like being there in Canal, with my cousin Tom, who I always have looked up to, and going, I've arrived. Mm-hmm. I'm within striking distance of the cool stuff. I was, getting ready to go back to art school in Minneapolis, and there was some, I can't remember what it was called, the Art Cellar, I think it was, at the in Minneapolis there, and they had all the cool supplies there too. Yeah. I just come from a small community where it's like you don't know that like all that shit's just a couple towns away. Yeah.
So you'd started your associate's degree at Northwestern Michigan College, and then you went out to work, but then you came to Minneapolis after you'd already started work. So what drew you to MCAD? You just mentioned MCAD. That's the Minneapolis College of Art and Design. Well, why here, Aaron?
Well, I'll tell you why. They were nice, number one. But here's the thing: it's like when I moved out west as a kid, it wasn't necessarily to go work. It was to go and be a snowboarder with my buddies, right? So it was out of Northwestern Community College. I had an associate's degree. That was basically, I learned the basics of design, but a lot of it was like to kind of placate my mom and dad, if that makes sense. Like this was like I could not leave and not have them with their blessing. We were going all the way out west. It was kind of like a long way to go. And it's kind of a Midwestern thing, but I had to have their blessing. Mm-hmm. It couldn't be this thing where I'm just kind of like just kind of going for it. Although I saw a lot of guys do that, I just knew better. Like, no, I might need their help. Whatever. I need their blessing. So that's where that all started. Was I went out west with all my buddies. We go all the way out to Oregon. And it's totally awesome. I guess is something that a young kid would say. It was just incredible. We were these young kids, but after a bunch of winters of kind of Peter Panning it and living out west and going crazy, all over the West, it was incredible. What an incredible way to cut your teeth as a young kid. I just started to realize like in that little town, I was into design, and I realized there's only so far I'm going to go. There's only so far. And it's not this kind of thing like it's all who you know. No. Everything's
you got to put it in.
Merit.
You work.
The harder you work, the harder you work, the farther you're going to get, and all this kind of stuff. But here's the thing. I just really, not in a sad way, I just realized like this isn't going to happen for me here. And the only way it's going to happen is if I go back. Where I'm from, it's a privilege to go to art school. Mm-hmm. It's a privilege to go to any school. And I knew that painfully clearly because, we just didn't have a lot of that opportunity. I was lucky as hell just to go to, community college. Like my mom and dad just didn't have that opportunity. To go to community college. So I knew clearly, like, this is my shot. I'm going to do this. I'm going to get this part out of the way, and then I'll go out west with my buddies. So I did that, right? When it was my turn to go back, you are excited. I was this, young guy. I did not have the funds for it. And when I went back, I was terrified to go even into these art schools and stuff. Because I just knew that I didn't have the money, and then here I'm going to be back there, and it's going to be embarrassing, and I'm going to be told, you kind of can't come and do this or something. So the first one I went to the Minneapolis College, I went to University of Michigan, because I'm in Michigan, and I go over to this thing, and I'm all excited, like, this is the University of Michigan. This is this prestigious place. My dad is a fan of the football team. This is where you go when you make it, if you're one of the lucky ones to go. And I went there and I pulled my portfolio out, showed all my stuff, and I remember the guy said something to me like, "Well, we're kind of a cerebral school."
What does that mean?
Well, I was like, well, I remember thinking like, well, fuck, did I do something wrong? What did I do wrong? And I don't, he was basically just kind of saying to me like, our program is just this. Okay, whatever that meant. And I just kind of was like, okay. So then I went over to Kendall School of Art and Design, which is in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And it looked awesome. It was an art school. You have to apply. You have to do all this kind of stuff. And I was terrified and I was excited. And I was like, okay, I'm going to turn this I'm going to turn this around for myself. I'm going to go start doing these things. And I'm going to see what this is like to be a part of this stuff. Because, where I was out west, the one common denominator when you would meet guys who had these cool jobs, from skate, in snowboarding or whatever I was trying to get myself into, was you realize they all went to art school. They all went to school. And I had an associate's degree, but I had this hole in me that said, well, you haven't done this yet, and you're going to need to go do this because otherwise whatever. So I had this hole in me because where I'm from, if you're one of the lucky ones to be able to go and achieve that, well, you're one of the lucky ones. So I knew I had to go do it. I thought you kind of had to go do that, like that's the only way you're going to get this thing going. So I started looking. When I'm at, this Kendall school, the guy says he looks at all my stuff, I'm all freaked out, and the guy says, I got to be honest with you. I don't know if I'd even want you to go here. I'm going to push you up the food chain. Are you going through Chicago? Well, yeah. I didn't have, he says, well, I want you to go to the Chicago Art Institute. I want you to go see what they have because you might be challenged more there. I mean, this is what he told me. And I'm just like, whoa, all right. And I drove through Chicago because I didn't have an appointment. I couldn't squeeze in. It was on a Saturday or something, I don't know, whatever it was. By Monday, I get up to Milwaukee, and that Monday morning, I go to MIAD is what it was called, Milwaukee Institute of Art and Design. And I go into there. I'm excited. It's like this. It's just a specific place. It's all art. It's an art school. It's just like Kendall now. Whereas U of M was this big thing. Here's the deal. The woman was mean to me. She was just mean. Yeah. That kind of like, not listening to you. And I'm all excited. I'm asking 1,000 questions. What does this look like? And she just was miffed. Maybe she was having a bad day, but I'll just never forget it. She was just mean. Whoever this person was, she was just kind of mean to me and wasn't interested. And I remember asking for a catalog, and it was like, she gave me one, but there was like a bit of a flip to it, and I just left there just kind of going,
what the F?
Well, just kind of mean. Like, okay, next stop is Minneapolis. I get up there. And this woman named Becky Haas was so nice to me. Saw my work, saw what I had going on. Like I don't think I even got to show it in Milwaukee, but I got to show my work up there and explain my situation. I'm this kid out west. I want to come back to school. I don't think I can afford it. I don't know how I'm going to do this, but am I too late? I'm 24 years old. She was so nice to me. And then she let me go and like walk all around the school. She let me go and meet a couple of professors, and one guy, he was a little prickly, he was a little full of himself. He was riding high on like, don't you know who I am kind of shit. I don't need to name his name, but all these years later, I don't know, I hope he had a good life. But anyway, the guy was just kind of a dick. And I remember being like, what? I get to make this anything I want. I'm in Minneapolis. My heroes are from there. These bands. Chuck Anderson is there. This hero of mine, graphic design hero. And I want to be a part of this. And how do I get to be a part of this? Well, they were just cool. And basically, that was it. I got this big, funny, this application. And I put my, I filled it all out, like just really meticulously. I was so excited they were even considering me. This is the way it felt for me. I was like, they're even. It was like an honor to even be in like striking distance. And I go back out west, and I have another winter, and I'm kind of waiting on this call, and it was I got a call a couple months later. I was in Telluride, and basically I was awarded a pretty sizable scholarship, is what it was. And it was $36,000. Wow. I remember just being like, what does $36,000 mean? Like the most I'd ever made up to that point was working in Alaska, and it was on a sightseeing train. And the most I ever made was $15,000 a year. So here's $36,000. How do I get to use this? Well, you get to play. If you go here for 4 years, it's $9,000 per year. Or if you go here for 2 years, it's something like 18, whatever it was. I got this big, awesome scholarship, and that allowed me to go. right? And then I took out some loans to cover,
The rest.
rent and other things, the rest, and went and did this thing. My mom paid my rent, which was about, $400 or $500 a month, $300 or $400 a month for my share of rent wherever I was living. And it was this thing, and I absolutely fell in love with Minneapolis. I just fell in love with the city. I fell in love with the style. I fell in love with the accents. I fell in love with like the gritty quality of it. Yes, the Walker Art Center was this incredible thing because it was like the highest of the high. It felt like to me, it was like really kind of high. Like I went there before school even started because that's just like a museum you go to,
right?
And they were known for design or something. And then I remember when I was in school, you would go to these things and it was kind of like you had to like kind of pull teeth to get kids to go over there. And I remember just being like, wait a second, like I was just paying for this. Not, just when I, got into town, I was like exploring town. So, it was just this instant like excitement to be close to all these things, because not only the design, the design community was really exciting to me, but there was also like this like ferocious kind of like, like you didn't have to be cool or something. It was like okay just to be kind of a regular designer or a regular person there. And that was really exciting to me that like, dare I say blue collar, but there was this sensibility of like some of the stuff they're even teaching at the Walker, that's just for the luckiest of the lucky.
It's a great place to live. It's a really great place to live here.
I mean, there's just there was like funding for the arts. There was like all these positives, and where in my travels I would hear things to the contrary. Yeah, we just don't have a lot of that here, but we're fighting back this way. And it was always this like they're holding us down kind of shit. And when I got to Minneapolis, it was like this is no excuse. Like this place is colder than all hell, for sure.
Yes, it is.
And I remember getting there, and it was like I was in late August, and it was hot and sweaty, and I was just like, oh man, I've been up in Alaska where it doesn't go past 70 degrees.
Yeah.
And now here I am in this place where it's like. It's kind of sweaty. I was a little freaked out, but I just dove right into school, and I did it in about 2.5 years, and then I had a big 4-year degree, and then I went back out west and started to work.
And you worked for a couple of other agencies. You worked on big projects. What I'm interested to know is why did you start Draplin Design Company? What was the like? When did you know this was the thing you were going to do? You go out on your own. You leave the safety of a regular paycheck. Are you insane?
Well, I mean, no, because you're hitting on all the things that would have like kind of held me back, and that is as what I always say as a good Midwesterner. I knew better than just jumping out because it was like this thing, like I'm gonna go do this. First of all, what's at the end of that little rainbow? Freedom, creative freedom, more money, more this, more that, more, all this kind of stuff. And it was like, whoa, why would I even go do this? Well, here's what it was. I mean, it's just as simple as this. It was like, I was in this situation where I was working for like a really cool place, and they did an incredible work. But it was just like, I was in there on my own using the space of the place a lot. Like I would like make these like postcard sets with my GoCo machine. And I was realizing it was like, man, my drive and my work ethic, it is considerably different than some of my colleagues here. Like they're just okay with going home at 5 o'clock every day and just kind of being cool with it, And I just looked at it. It was like, first of all, just to be close to all of this, it wasn't enough for me from 9 to 5. It wasn't enough for me. I got out of my job where we were working on client stuff, and then I would work on my own projects like all night. Like, and here's the thing. It's like, well, I was on my own. I didn't, I had a girlfriend. I didn't have a girlfriend, whatever, but I had this drive to do this because I just knew where I'm from, it is non-negotiable. You have got to make your own way. It isn't negotiable. Like there's no...
Nothing's guaranteed.
Well, here's the deal. I didn't get to go back to my mom and dad and say this didn't work. Mm-hmm. I had to go back to them and say, like this is getting kind of rough. I'm doing my best to handle, do this and do that. But it wasn't this thing where I didn't have any parachute to kind of catch me. I had to go make it work. So I'm in this situation where like I'm seeing myself like I'm working late. I'm all right with it. I'm being a good worker. I'm trying to, perform and all that kind of stuff. And then it started to get freaky. And it was like, and the freakiness was like, well, wait a second, why are we working so much? I'm not getting any more money for that. Mm-hmm. Well, that's just what you do. And I was one of the guys that would stay late. I would stay late thinking, well, this is what you do. This is what you do. You don't rock the boat.
Right.
You stay late. You be a good worker, and then you get a raise, and then you get one of these, and then you get you get to travel more. And I was already getting to go on projects and stuff because either they liked what I was doing, or they could see that I could kind of handle it, or I was this young guy who was ready to go, fight the fight and all that stuff. And then I just realized it's like, man, I remember when I put my month in there, it was just kind of like, they offered me more cash to stay.
Yeah, that doesn't work. That just makes it worse.
Well, I was like, well, where the hell was that shit a month ago?
Yeah.
When I was in here working all the time. Mm-hmm. And then you get resentment. And it was like, well, I'm not there to fight anyone. I'm there to do my job. And we're spending time playing, I'm not gonna. I'm doing my very best to watch my language on this stuff.
It's okay.
So hard. Oh
it's
my
okay.
God!
You be yourself, Aaron. It's all good.
I want it. Well, then here goes the first F word. Here it comes, flugelhorn. No. Well, whatever. Like I'm fighting hard not to be like, I don't know. I was just doing my job, and then I just saw like the writing on the wall. It's like I have this energy.
Got to harness it, man.
This guy pulled me aside and he said, hey man, just so you know, you've got what it takes. And I was like, what are you talking about? And he said, you've got what it takes, man. You've got, look at the hours you're putting in here. Why are you in here so long? And I was like, well, because I'm doing this, I'm doing that. I'm excited to go and just use the facilities. I remember being able to, I had my guitar and an amp in there. And that means I could crank that shit so loud and just blow the roof off the place. And I could not do that at my apartment. I couldn't do that. It would have pissed the people off below me and above me or whatever it was. And I remember even that was a privilege to be like, wow, man, these guys can have their own parties and their own stuff. And it's awesome and all this. And that's when it was just kind of like, I want the freedoms of all this stuff on my own terms, from my own hand. And this guy was like, you've already proven to me that you're going to put the time in. Go do it. And I did. And I jumped out. And it was scary,
yes.
But I had a couple people saying to me things like, hey, man, just so you know, we've got some work for you if you're willing to take this from us, And it was like, are you kidding me? Like, I am scared. How am I going to make a living? I remember telling my mom and dad, I bought a house and I'm moving into this house and I'm quitting my job. And my mom and dad were just like,
are you insane?
They were pissed. They were like, is that the best decision? My mom has always been an incredible sounding board for me. Always been, always been someone I can go to and say, my dad was a little more just kind of like, just go for it, but my mom was always like really pragmatic and like, well, let's just think this through. She, we would do like checks and, like make a list and say like, what are the pluses and negatives of this decision you're going to make before you go racing out west. Let's think about this just a little bit. Right. My mom was always that for me. And it taught me, just to kind of like, try to think through the cause and effect. What happens if I do this, and what's that going to be, and what's my money like? Because I couldn't really go to them and say like, I'm in trouble.
No,
it was only me making this decision, really. And I jumped out, and then that first year, I tripled my wage.
Good for you. That's so awesome. Yeah. And you haven't looked back. It's been 15 years. You've done an incredible...
Well, I'm never going back.
Never going back. Yeah. So many speaking fiascos all over the world. It's I would say that you could classify this company as a success. I think I'm going to go out on a limb.
So. Well, I'm not. I don't want to be superstitious, But for the second quarter of 2019, it is going to be a motherfucker. Well, it's awesome. So here's the thing. It's like, what I understood clearly when I got out, is if this thing doesn't go well, I can go get a job. I'll go get a job.
Yeah.
I know how to be a worker. Yeah. I know how to be a good employee and citizen and do my job and not, take it on the chin and be with clients. And I knew I could do all that stuff. I'd already proven that to myself. But this thing was like, let me see what I can do on my own. If it doesn't go well, I can always go back. Well, it went well.
It's gone well.
I'm just proud to say it went really well.
You should be very proud. I was recently in London, and my wife and I are walking through the Conran shop. You know the Conran shop. And I'm looking at stuff and picking things up, and I get to the stationery section of the store, and I see something that I think I recognize, and I look at it, and I pick it up, and it's Field Notes. I'm like, Field Notes? That's Draplin. What is that doing here? Like, that's amazing. Yeah. So what's the story behind Field Notes? I mean, everybody makes a notebook, right?
Well, yeah.
But I think that's, how did that start? How did Field Notes start?
Well, when it comes to, that place I was talking about, it was this incredible place I got to work for called Cinco Design. And they are still an awesome shop here in town. I don't want to ever feel like I'm like, it just was my time to, those guys who I worked for, they went on their own too, and it's like, it was my time to go try it. When I worked at this Cinco, that's where I made my first Field Notes. And it was just as simple. It was just as simple as here I am in this place, and here I am in this, we have these resources, and I'm going to make my own book. Like, I always was using little notebooks and stuff, right? And I went to Italy a couple years after getting out of there, and I bought my first set of Moleskines or something, right?
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
And then, here I am in this place where it's like, I made my first field note in extracurricular activities at this place, this Cinco Design. Like, when everyone's out of there, I'm in there dinking around with all my own stuff, right? And, it was like, the freedom to say, I just like to make stuff. Art school taught me how to make my own stuff. Make your own paper, make your own binding, put the thing together on its own. Not like no one else is gonna It really created a monster because it was like, wow, you can do all this stuff on your own for yourself. This is cool, and never ever forget that. This kind of thing. So I made my first ones. In a late night session at this Cinco. I'm in there working, I'm doing my stuff, I'm doing my things. And, I made enough just for my own, I made one. I just screen printed one. And I remember people asking, what are those things? It's just when you're out, we're sitting there taking notes in a client meeting, and it's like, well, you think about it, you use these things in a way where it's like, to chart what we do. And they're kind of field notes within this sort of this realm of, us taking, listening and stuff. So this is where this kind of starts. It's like, I just kind of made my own, and then a couple of years later, I need some more, and I hand screen. I'm on my own now, and I hand screen print, another 200 of these things, and then I give a couple to friends, and then I give a couple to this guy named Jim Kudal, who I was a fan of in Chicago, and Jim kind of flips out. He's like, what is this stuff? Like, who made this? He's kind of confused, and I said, well, it's me. I made it, and this is this little thing, this little project I've been working on, and I don't really know what it's for and all that kind of stuff. And he kind of says, do you know what you have here? And I just kind of, with my tail between my legs, I said, well, I don't know what I have. Tell me, And we kind of shake hands on it, and we get this thing going. And before I know it, we have a company. And we have people interested, and we have people wanting to write about it. And it was like this time right when, the iPhone is like really taking off, and yet it's kind of a prickly thing because it's like, people are realizing there's going to be this detriment to how much time we're spending on our phones. So it's like there's a bit of a cultural timing to this stuff where it's like, wow, we're lucky that people are sort of reacting to this stuff and seeing that, like, this is going to be kind of freaky how much time we're spending on these machines and things. So here is paper. It's this fun, refreshing thing to use. It's not this, whatever you want to call it. And, here's the thing. It's like, we hit something, and, that's where, I just couldn't find ones that I liked. So I made my own. It's just as simple as that. I couldn't find ones I liked, and I made my own. And out of that, came a company. And out of that came, this thing that, like, all these years later, like, I joke that, like, Jim gave me life. Well, Jim gave me life. I will always be thankful for what he saw, in me or something, and saw in this, in this product, and, gave me that much more freedom just to say it's okay to make this stuff. Like, I learned that kind of from art school. It was like, I'm not gonna wait for other people to tell me something is or isn't. I'm just gonna go do it. And that all really goes back to, like, the skateboard world and stuff, just not quite knowing any better and just kind of
do it.
For it.
What's your role in the company these days?
Well, I am, I own half of it, and what they do is, though, Jim, it's Jim and Michelle, Jim. Brian. There's a whole crew of people. It's
art director. You're still designing for it. You're still participating in it. It's not like this is something.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it pains me not to be there on the front lines of those guys like every 2 minutes.
Yeah.
But I'm in Portland, they're in Chicago, they're shipping orders all the time. Stuff is going out, stuff is going crazy, it's going awesome. And yet, I trust them with my entire life. Like, there is none of this like, oh, it's like, those guys make really, really beautiful decisions. They do. And I sometimes I'm right there as part of it. Other times I am disconnected. I'm out here, and it's basically Jim just sort of guiding me and saying, whoa, like, let's just, I need you for this. All right, tell me what I got to do, and he'll just let me know. This is what I need you to do now, and you've got a day to do it. Go, and then I'm off and running.
Which one's in your pocket right now?
What am I using right now? I'm actually using a snow blind. It was called Snow Blind. If you take it outside, this thing, and this was from 2015, but if you take it outside, it's white cover. You take it outside, it's got some ink, something on that stuff that will turn bright blue when the sun hits it.
Oh.
And it was like a winter edition, and they were awesome. And I'm using one of those right now. I can't quite talk about the next one I'm using because that's a bit of a prototype.
Got it.
That one's coming real soon here. But this has just been.
They're beautiful, Aaron. I just love seeing them, and
cool.
I love the different editions that you have. I think I like the one that has the spacecraft on it the most. What's it called? 3 missions?
Oh, yeah.
Three missions?
Yeah. There's been, now when I talk to Jim, and this is always like a bit of like, I always feel a little bad, but I'm starting to forget the names.
Oh.
There's so many of them. I forget the names. There's just so
That's
many.
Okay.
It's okay. Well, yeah, we're always coming up with new stuff. I love these guys. I am in awe of the thinking and the films. The films are just incredible on their own that promote these things every time. These things come flying out of the gates. We have these cool little films these guys make. These guys are filmmakers. I'm not a filmmaker. You know what I mean? I'm not a filmmaker. I'm a graphic designer who's in awe of a couple, filmmakers. And it's like, they're just constantly blowing my mind.
Yeah, I
agree.
And
I get to be a fan.
Yeah.
And then I get to be this like weirdo who's like, sometimes responsible for some of this stuff. And, there's days where, my role is like, Jim will just call me up and be like, hey man, I need this now. Like, you only get a day to do it. I don't care if you're on the road or whatever you're doing. He's very good about that. He knows what an animal I am and all that stuff.
That's
but
awesome.
He's just really good about it. And then he'll tell me, this is the time that you have to do this, and we'll see something soon, buddy. And it's like, all right. And then I know that, like, Jim is like directing me. And that's no different when it's Michelle or Brian.
Or
I just
else.
understand that these guys
It's beautiful.
got me,
Just a beautiful
they got me
product.
going, and yeah.
It's a beautiful product.
Yeah,
I have one more thing I want to talk about, and then I'm going to let you go. And I think I've at least saved my favorite for last. So you've done some work for our government. The Obama administration tapped you a while back, and you recently started working with the Postal Service. And the thing that I saw that I absolutely fell in love with was the new Star Ribbon USA Forever stamp, and I believe it's coming out very soon, here at the end of March. It's beautiful. I looked at it. I saw it without you mentioning it, and I knew that it was familiar. It looked like something you made. At least I thought it did.
Cool.
There's so much to unpack here. First of all, congratulations. This is like a designer of the USA Forever stamp. It's literally going to be around forever. How does that feel?
Oh man, well this is, if you, people, I'm on podcasts and stuff, right? So thank you for having me, and I'm lucky to do these things.
Yeah.
And yet, people will say to me, well, what are your dream jobs? Like, who do you want to work for? Because, maybe, so-and-so from, like, let's see, some band, like, who do I really want to work for? I don't know. The Flamin' Lips.
Yeah. Wayne Coyne. Work for Wayne Coyne.
Well, I would love to, but I know their art director, and we're kind of buds. When I go through Oklahoma City now, I'll kind of dial them up, and we'll go have a piece of pizza or whatever it's going to be. Well, and I've kind of been able to see, kind of like how the sausage is made there, right? Well, that is something that comes right to mind when you say, what is a dream client? Well, I would love to work for the Flaming Lips, but that one that has always been on my plate, just to say, I want to make a stamp.
Yeah.
Who gets to make a stamp? And well, if you look, there's different people that have done it and stuff. And how do you even get involved? Do they have to tap you? Do you have to, what are the politics of this stuff? And how do I get to go be one of those people that do this? So, the answer is I still don't really know. But that, frankly, was one of the dream jobs that I had, where it was like, I want to do one of these for not just the design nerdery of it, but I want to do it for America, man. That kind of thinking. It's like, because to get a little weird for a second, what I love so much about stamps, it is a clear democratization of design.
Absolutely.
That means everyone gets to use a stamp, and sometimes it's only those who can afford it. And I'm just not feeling that shit. I like the idea that that anyone can afford these things, and it's not just those from from a museum or something. It's like people need stamps because they just need stamps, and there's just something so cool about that. And, here is all, it's no different with a street sign. Like, people need street signs. They need those things to, everyone gets to use a street sign, and in some respects, that's design also.
Yes.
So I knew that stamps were just like this, there was this democratization of graphic design there, and I was excited about that. And I saw a couple come down the pipe. I saw, Jessica Hish do one. I saw the guys, my friends Tyler and Elsa from Always with Honor here in Portland, Oregon. They did this Coastal Bird series, and I was emotional when I saw it because it was just like, I know these kids. So this is, whether or not I got to do it, I was so proud for them because they got to make something for America, not just this, neat coastal birds thing, which, actually was really kind of a hard thing to work on. It took a long time, and they were, you get to hear some of these stories. Well, I was just absolutely blown away. And then I was like, well, I sure do want to do one, but we'll just see what happens. So I would mock things up on my own and just play with it.
Yeah.
And then just kind of say, well, someday I'll get the call, whatever. And then I got a call. And, what does it feel like? Well, I am, I'm a little emotional about it, honestly, because I know it's a once in a lifetime kind of thing. And, to everyone who's listening, the thing is I just was okay with being a worker who was just going to go work and hopefully work for good people and work on good projects and make good money so I could pay back, my mom and dad and pay back things and take care of my life and my stuff and all my, whatever. Like I was just okay with that. That's not a dirty word,
No.
right? I was okay with that. And I just didn't think, that it would ever be this sort of situation where it was like, and by the way, not only are you going to love every single element of your job, you're also going to be able to work for your country. It gets, I don't want to say it's patriotic, but it's
It is. It's exactly that.
Well, yeah.
It is. This is a service to the United States, and we are thankful as a design community, as a regular community. And honestly, for those of you that are listening, you should check out our website where the transcript to this podcast is, so you can see the design of the stamp. It's classic, but it's modern. It's just like I couldn't have thought of I don't know how you thought of it. Where did the inspiration come from? Did you have 100 of them, and then you showed?
God. You showed the ones that got away.
I was going to say.
Oh my God!
How long did this process take with the government? What
Well, first of all, it's like, just as a bit of a to kind of go back for 1 second to the Obama thing. Like, it's not like Barry Obama called me up. It's this group that works for him in Chicago, and that group called me and said, "Hey, do you want to work on this thing? We need a little bit of help." So they were already like in cahoots with Obama.
Yeah.
And then this group, the Mode Project, called me. So what you get is it's like a telephone. If the White House is the biggest thing, the biggest call, and all the way down to me, I'm like the 17th step in this thing.
Yeah.
Just straight up like the very last bit. Well, with this thing, it was like, well, how long does it take? And, I can't really go to details because it's still really fresh.
Yeah,
I just don't want to embarrass those guys.
Right.
And it is kind of a tricky thing. But I will say this much. When I had a chance to grease the wheel, and what I mean by that is like I was at this HOW conference, and it was down in Atlanta, and I noticed these young ladies who were at my merch table. And by the way, everyone in Atlanta who came to the merch table, boy, you guys set a whole record that day. Thank you so much. See, I'm still thankful that everyone just came and bought shit that day, right? So same thing here is like I see this girl, and she's like, I see on her little lapel or whatever, it says USPS, and I go crazy.
Yeah.
I just kind of go up to her and I go, "Oh my God, you work for the post office?" She's like, "Yeah, it's tough and it's this and it's that." And I'm like, "But wait, you work for the post office?" And I just and she's like, "Well, have you ever worked?" And I said, "Just tell me about your job." And I go crazy and I say, I just tell her, I said, "This would be a dream of mine to work for. You're so lucky to work there." And she's like, "You know what? No, I work in like I'm in the I work behind the scenes, and I'm just like this kind of a grunt or whatever the thing was." And I was like, "But you get to work for America."
Yeah.
And I remember kind of being like, "Well, that's one way to look at it, because to me it's so much bigger than whatever little goofy bullshit I'm working on. It's so much bigger. It's like you're working for your country. Like say you work on something, and then the next time you go to the post office, you are buying one of the things that you got to work on. It's just almost like too much for me to even think about." And I know I'm getting a little dramatic, but it's absolutely the truth. It's like, that is so cool.
It's very cool. I agree. It's important. It's very important.
And then she says a couple, here's the deal. It's like, I get this call from a guy a couple days later who's like, "Hey, we were tipped off, and you are someone that we had seen before, and we had seen these things in these forums, and would you want to work on some of this?" And I went fucking crazy on that phone. I just went nuts, and I just told him, I said, "Man, this has been a dream of mine, and I've wanted to do this for so long, and I will do whatever you ask of me," right? Like, this is not about me picking and choosing and saying, "Well, I am this, and I need to do this kind." No. This was just me completely being like, if there's anything you guys ever need, you let me know, and I'm ready to go.
Like that.
There's none of this with this caveat or this or that. No,
Doesn't matter.
Like, you just let me know. If there's no money involved, I'm involved. I just want to prove to you, and I proved to him. I said, I'm down to do this. I'm down to help out. anytime you're ready. And he got me going, and I had all this stuff on ice. I've been dreaming about this for years. And I had all this stuff on ice, so I showed him a bunch of stuff, and he reacted to a couple things. And I remember the things he would say would be like, you made this? It's like, yeah, I made it. Let me show you the other 43 things I made too.
Right.
And then he would go completely crazy and just be like, well, I remember there was one that I showed that like I had already printed on my own. And he was like, did you already print that? I'm like, yeah, I made a mini print. And he's like, damn, because we can't really show that now, And it's like, so here's the thing. For the one that was selected, I think I showed 43.
43, wow.
Yeah, I went crazy. I mean, I would do it again tonight. If the guy called me and said, I would just say, I will do it right now.
You're so prolific.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised that you made 43. We have a blog post about the history of the TEN7 logo and a description of like how we went through the process with you and what's important and so on and so on. But cool. I remember you had over 100 initial stabs at the TEN7 logo, and one of them in the first round was very close to what we ended up with. And so you are certainly prolific. I want to ask about the typeface, USA Forever. What typeface is that? What did you choose?
I didn't choose it. It was art directed by Greg Breeding in the Journey Group. It wasn't. I'm trying to figure out how to talk about it. I think it's Helvetica. I have to go look. There's been a couple of versions I've seen, and and it's like, wait, I didn't really even design it. It was like I gave him the form of the star, and then he went back and he probably took a look at all the other stamps and said, okay, this one's going to work this way, and here's why we do it this way. So I'm pretty sure it's just Helvetica, like light.
Yeah, it does look thin.
But like I say, of course, what I would have picked to go with that thing, and I had other versions and other mock-ups.
You would have. What would you have picked? Just I know what it is, but you say what you would have.
Well, I think I showed Helvetica Bold.
Something really thick and strong.
Well, there's this tribute to like where I learned about stamps. It was like when I was a little kid, and I remember those stamps from the late '70s, and I have all those stamps now. I collect that stuff, and it's like they would use it unabashedly, and it was beautiful and legible, and that was a tribute. But here's the thing: it's like you give it over to those guys, and then they take it from you, and then they make the best decision. And I just couldn't be more tickled. It's just.
It looks. I can't wait to see it. I can't wait to see it in person.
Oh, and there's others. There's others in the mix. I'm not allowed to talk about.
Oh my god! Oh my god! Oh my god! It's going to be awesome.
I just hope I make it through. I hope I make it through today. Just today.
Okay. Final.
Much less make it to 22nd.
Final question, Aaron. Final question.
Yeah.
Are you going to buy the coil of 10,000 USA Forever stamps?
Oh my god! Let me just tell you right now. I absolutely was like, how would that work? Does it come on a roll? Does it come on a sticker? Because I was like, once in your life, you're going to buy a $5,500, 10,000 stamps. 10,000 stamps at 55 cents is $5,500. And I'm going to roll in there and throw it on my credit card.
You should.
And the idea is I could just go door to door and be like, how many doors do you have to go to get through 5,500 stamps? But I have to tell you, when the announcement was made, I was laying there and I was doing the math, and I was like, it was a complete. It wasn't a ridiculous option. I was like, no, I'm just going to go buy the 5,500.
You should do it.
There's no way I can. Well, I know.
Put it up in your studio. Put it on a big old bar. Put it in your studio and give stamps every. Give them stamps.
Who wants some stamps? I know. There's just something about it where it's like I'm just going to have to go do that, because the idea is the 20 stamps that they come in. Sure, I'm going to get a bunch of those and put those away. But I just want to be able to, when anyone comes into the shop, to be able to be like, over there, I got your stamps covered for the next. I just hope people are still sending envelopes with a stamp on it. Right?
Oh, yeah.
A lot of the stuff I get is junk mail. And I notice up in the corner, it's going to be one of my patriotic stamps. It's what they call a patriotic stamp. And it's like, they use that sticky patriotic stamp to send junk mail. So this one will be used that way. But it's like, I'm going to use it to pay all my bills and all my stuff. And I kind of sobered up and was like, oh, man. There's no way. What the hell am I going to do with $5,500 these things, but I think it's just giving them to buddies for the rest of my life.
I think
just
it's
be
great.
this thing to have my buddy build me something that's like this awesome, just this like sort of like this thing that just distributes these things, that just emits these things. You're allowed to grab a couple every time you come in here for the rest of my life.
I think that would be great.
I got to come up with the funds, but I'm going to do it, and I think I'm just going to pop because I just want to have the picture of me like shaking the hand of like these gals at my post office on 50th and Sandy here. They know me, and I a month ago I was like, "You guys, I made a stamp," and she's like, "Oh, you didn't make it. You're the guy that brings in all the poster tubes, right?" I said, "Yeah." She's like, I said, "I made a stamp. It's coming soon." And the last time I went in there, I got this is like 3-4 weeks ago. I got to say, it got accepted. Like, it's real. Now it's announced, it's happening. And then the next time I get to go in there is I get to go buy them from them. So we're going to get the photo of me shaking their hands and the whole deal. There's a first day cover these guys are designing.
Oh, man.
And I'm on cloud 9.
You should be. You deserve it. It's
cloud 10.
There you go.
Cloud TEN7. Look at me working. Yeah, I'm working.
You're working. I love it. Thank you so much for spending your time with me today. It's really been a pleasure talking to you.
Well, thanks, Yvonne. And listen, tell your better half I said hi and the whole family. And
Go
door to door in Minneapolis and say that Aaron Draplin says
I'll do
hello.
that.
Draplin.com, you guys. Go get some merch. Go to Draplin.com. Go to fieldnotesbrand.com. Go to ddcbook.com. Last I heard, we're at 54,000 sold.
We never talked about your book. We never talked about pretty much everything. Let's have you back on the show. Let's have you back and we can talk about your book.
Hit me up in a while. All right. Thanks, you guys.
All
See
right.
you around.
Aaron is the founder of Draplin Design Company, the author of pretty much everything, and an all-around nice guy. You can find him all over the internet as @Draplin, and of course at draplin.com and fieldnotesbrand.com. You've been listening to the TEN7 Podcast. Find us online at ten7.com/podcast. And if you have a second, do send us a message. We love hearing from you. Our email address is podcast@ten7.com. Until next time, this is Ivan Stegic. Thank you for listening.